Hey, welcome to the shop. Today I'm going to show you two different practice drills that you can use when you're learning to MIG weld to make a lot of progress in a short amount of time, and you won't use very much material. The exact material you use doesn't really matter. I'm using this 1/4-inch thick flat bar that I got out of the remnants bay at my local steel yard at a really good price. And I've cut 3 pieces here. And the exact size of these doesn't matter either, but I'm running 4 inches by 6 inches for the big plate, and then 2 plates that are 2 inches by 6. I'm going to remove the mill scale with one of these strip discs. I really like these because they can remove the mill scale in a hurry, but they don't eat into your material. If you want to know about these, I just got them off Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. Now, a lot of people ask me about this plate that I weld on. It's really just to keep the surface of my fixture table from getting extra wear when I don't need the actual fixture table itself. I'm running 035 wire and the Fronius today to mix it up a little bit. Now let's set this to 350 inches per minute, and that should give me right around 150 amps. The first exercise is going to be padding beads on a flat plate, and I'm going to show you a lot of little things as we get into this. This is a very simple exercise, and that lets you focus on the fundamentals without getting distracted by tying into joints and things like that. See, I'm focusing on 3 fundamental elements of technique. 1, my angle; 2, my stick out or the distance from my gun to the workpiece; and 3, my travel speed. My bead will be as consistent as those 3 things, and that's what you need to pay attention to. And by running this and doing the reps, you get better at it. See, I have an acceptable bead there. No matter how good or bad yours looks though, take a look at your bead in between each run and make a goal for the next pass. Right here I can see a little bit of inconsistency towards the end, so I want to become more consistent. And the way I'm going to do that is prop up differently. See here, I can ride right along my plate, so I'm not twisting my wrist or anything like that. And I can scoot along, and I think that'll make it more consistent, plus just getting in some additional reps. So notice right here, I'm overlapping that first bead by a little bit, almost like a lap joint here, and that is going to let me continue to build and fill up this whole plate. And there's really no end to how tall you can stack this, but notice it is a little bit more consistent, so I was able to achieve my goal there. And that's what I'd recommend that you do, is you go through and you run something and then set a goal, and then repeat that over and over again. So here I'm welding the same way, that same push angle, and just reinforcing what I'd been working on. And then once I'm getting the hang of that, I can mix it up a little bit. So with short circuit MIG, you can run with a push angle like I am, but you can also run with a drag angle. That isn't true with all MIG processes, but it is here with short circuit. So I'm going to run a bead with a drag angle because sometimes when you're welding on a project, you have to go one way or the other, and it's good to practice that before you're on an important project. Now here, I'm getting a very similar result to before. That's what I want. I want to be able to get a similar, fairly consistent result with either technique. Now, something else that's good to practice is your restarts or your stop and starts. And right here, I'm going to stop pretty abruptly and leave a crater because I know I'm starting up again. If I were not starting up again, I'd fill that in, and then start ahead of it and loop back through. And that's going to fill that crater back in, and I'll start going again. I like to build up a little extra reinforcement at those restarts because it can be a weak point. So you end up something like that. And that's a good thing to practice as you go down the plate. You can also experiment with gun manipulation, right? I was just running straight stringers for all of those, but you can manipulate the gun a little bit with some little loops or something like that. And right here I'm doing that, but I'm not ever leaving the puddle. I like to keep it pretty small and run a nice continuous bead. That's going to be the most trouble-free and least likely to have issues with lack of fusion and things like that. And so you can continue to work your way down and experiment with things, and you can learn a lot with this. You might need to switch between a couple of plates or cool your plate off with water if it gets overheated, but it's a lot of practice in a hurry. Let's look at the second drill. If you are just learning how to weld, all of the information and resources on YouTube and online can be really helpful, but at the same time, all this information can distract from the principles that are most important, especially early on. And so I put together my online welding courses where I walk you through step by step, and you'll learn one small principle and then practice it and then build on that. And this has worked really well for thousands of people who have gone through this course to really learn fast. I keep them as affordable as possible, and you'll find everything you need to know linked in the description below. I call this drill the flip-flop, not because you wear flip-flops when you run it, but because we're going to flip-flop between the two sides. Now before I start, I'm going to clean the spatter out of my nozzle, and that's what the end of MIG pliers are for. If you're not familiar with that, it works pretty well. And then I'll tack up this T-joint right here. And as I do, notice how it pulls the other side open. This is something you always have to look out for when you're fitting your pieces, so I'll hold it closed while I tack the other side, and these coupons will be ready to go. Now I'll start off by running a fillet weld in this T-joint. So once you can run a nice bead on plate from that practice that we did before, this is the next step. And I'm paying attention to the same variables, my stick out, my angle, and travel speed. That travel speed controls the size of my weld. The slower I go, the bigger it'll be. And I'm using a little bit of manipulation here because my settings are just a little bit colder than I'd normally run for this thickness, but they're within an acceptable range. And this manipulation helps me to slow down and spread it out so I can get a decent result. Now, after I run the weld, I'm going to look at this. And the thing I like about this exercise is you get to take a mulligan on every single pass because I'm going to flip over to the other side. So right there, I can see a little bit of inconsistency, and I want to improve that. So I've actually turned my settings up on the machine from the 350 inches per minute to 400, and my voltage from 19 up to 22, which is going to help me out a bit to just get a little bit smoother result and wet everything in. And you can see how well it's flowing in there with those higher settings. So I made a change from side 1 to side 2, and I'm looking for improvement. And I'll stack these multi-pass fillet welds to look at that. But look how much more consistent it is just by making that change. And you learn something every time you go through that. Now I'm going to land somewhere in the middle on my settings for the rest of these. And 3 passes is good for, your basic multi-pass fillet. So 1 underneath and 2 over the top. So I want to overlap this one onto the first bead a little bit, almost just like I was stacking beads on plate. But I recognized not too far into this that this one was riding a little bit low. And so I want it to be up a little bit higher onto that first bead. So that's what I'm going to improve when I flip-flop to the other side. So here I am back on the other side, working on improving that. And by running a bead, checking it, and trying to improve something right away and then running that, it really helps to accelerate learning a lot. So right here, I'm sitting up higher on that bead. And you might be working on other things that you notice, or maybe it starts out as an absolute mess. But I guarantee you can do better by paying attention and trying to improve each time. And you can see compared to that first side, the second side is sitting up a little bit higher, so I'm going to have less to fill in the second time around. Now we're flip-flopped back to the first side. And you can tell this might get a little bit boring, but we don't necessarily do this for the fun of it. I actually enjoy it, but even if you don't, we mostly do this to get a result. Now, I stopped here to put in a restart. I'd like to say I did that on purpose, but I actually just slipped off the trigger of the gun. But anyway, we're going again, and I'll finish that one out. And it's a pretty slow travel speed because I really needed to build up that fillet weld to fill in for riding a little bit low the first time. This one I'll be able to travel a little bit faster. So right here, I'm cruising along, and notice my travel angle is still a slight push angle, but my work angle is pointed a little bit more into that upper plate to just make sure that I'm able to fill that in. I want to watch that that puddle is filling everything in so I don't get any undercut or little low spots at the edge of the weld. And it's running overall really well. And by the time you get to this point, I have run a whole lot of weld. I've run 3 feet of weld on this and about 6 or 7 feet on that bead on plate exercise. And so it's just a ton of practice compared to building a project. And because you don't have all the complexity of a project to get in the way of your learning, and because you can learn something from checking your bead and apply it right away, it really sticks, at least for me. And I've found those that I help going through these types of exercises makes a huge, huge difference to learning quickly without a lot of time or material. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in today. If you are interested in some of my online courses, be sure to check them out, linked in the description below. And if you enjoyed this or learned something, I really appreciate it if you leave me a comment or hit that thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.